workshop, EM training for local elected officials. They got a bunch of people here, so that must mean that we don't, not very bright. It takes a lot of them to teach us.
We're here to help y'all.
Oh, you know, yeah.
We're all in trouble then.
Well, we're gonna open it up with prayer and the pledge, and then we'll go right into it. Mr. Commissioner Hart.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and our blessings. Lord Heavenly Father, we ask you to go with us as we serve the people of Baker County. Lord Heavenly Father, give us wisdom to understand and knowledge to do what is right and our best. Lord Heavenly Father, we thank you for the people in all the dangerous places in this world watching up for our rights. Lord Heavenly Father, we just praise you and love you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, sir.
Technical thing, right? I think we're just waiting on Sarah to get the US. She can do a USB, so she'll be right
Oh,
behind.
no problem.
I think that's what that is.
I just wanted it to be waiting on you instead of waiting on me.
I'm going to say dime holding up a dollar.
That's your roof.
Jason Lowry, Chris Reed,
We're here, y'all can start.
We're waiting on Director Blanchard.
Okay, we're not the last one.
We're actually waiting
Are
on
you-
staff, I think.
We got the Jeopardy music or anything
Something.
playing.
Well, you don't sure don't want me to sing, so you better come up with something.
Tyler can lead us all in a song.
Praise and worship.
There you go.
She's not too good. She goes to the specialist Thursday to
I
doctor.
had a new grandbaby this weekend. He's not doing so well, so if y'all don't mind keeping him in prayer.
I've been having them
He's
in
kind of
prayer.
young.
Yeah, he still can't, his lungs just ain't doing what it's supposed to do. He had a better night last night than he had
that.
there.
PA, I guess is what it was, and he was really sharp. They're not
I
sure
like,
what they're gonna have to do with that, to go in and put a plate for the bone to heal. They said it would
Good.
heal,
Good.
but when she fell, she broke her 12th vertebrae. Freaking accident.
I'm fixing to go back to recess.
2:30 in the morning, scared the heck out of me. She just passed out. She got nauseous, and she said she got up to touch back because she felt sick. We got to get the next.
We're gonna recess the workshop until we get everything we need.
That's fine.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to go back into our emergency management workshop. We're having some technical difficulties there, so we recessed and we're back ready to go, I think. Yeah. Mr. Blanchard, we're waiting on you.
All right, thank you all. Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. So we're coming back today to try and do some more education on Statute 252 and the roles and responsibilities, not only of elected officials, but our overall county and the emergency management function. We've been doing some great strides, obviously, with the storms that came through last year, working with the different departments, road department, fire department, finance, obviously our county manager as well. And as you see, to mirror the PowerPoint, if you want, in front of you are all of the slides as well. I brought several people with me to help talk about similar experiences from other areas in the state. I have from Florida Department of Emergency Management, Joshua Standards. He's our regional coordinator for this area and other counties in the area. From Region 5, I've got Elizabeth Kaysen with Florida Department of Emergency Management. And I've got Donna Free. She's with Walton County. So they've got the unique thing of a beach as well as a lot of good country.
We got a beach.
We do a Lusty Beach, yes, sir. That's fabulous. Anybody wants to take a chance, we'll go out there this afternoon, and we'll be out at Lusty.
Shoals Park, yeah.
Shoals Park?
There's a,
I like Lusty Beach better. Some of it washed away. Next I have over here from Brevard County, the Director of Emergency Management, John Scott. So again, some similar things. Plus, when we have the storms going back to Idalia, several of us, we cross paths working in other counties helping and working with them so they can bring some of their experiences to talk about a few of the things we're going to go through today. Again, this is just high level. Why is it so important for the elected officials to know why EM is so important? Is because there's so many different programs that are affected for the county and the residents that there's no way any one person can know everything. And one of the things I like to do is surround myself with smart people, so even if I don't know about it, I know where to go to get the information. So it's one of the things I want to start doing here is showing that there are other avenues that we can reach out to. It's going to increase the roles and responsibilities that we are statutorily required to under specifically 252. It's basically how we're going to, we talked about CEMP before, which is our emergency management plan for the county. And with all the different areas that's affected, there are certain trainings that are needing to take place, not only at the divisions, but also at the basically the policy groups role to make sure that we are doing everything we're supposed to do for the county. Okay. Bueller? I broke it.
Just making sure it's on, right, John, on the side?
There it is.
There you go.
Okay. All right, so the actual statute in there, which covers under 252, this one specifically talks about the political subdivisions and the comprehensive emergency management plan that we're required to have. As I mentioned before, we are taking a deep dive into our comprehensive emergency management plan, which is broken into essential functions, which is everything from animals that we might need to take care of, to the hospitals and all the other divisions in there. We're going to each one, including the Red Cross, the Salvation Army, and as I mentioned before, as we started reaching into our current CMP and talking to some of our partners, they said an example was we haven't done that in 8 years. So we are refreshing and revisited. We're not dictating what they do in times of emergency, but we're asking what their functions are to bring in currently. And we've got some really good relationships, not only with the Salvation Army and emergency, or the Red Cross. It's been very helpful to see that we're not just rubber stamping some things. We've also educated some other counties when they looked at their CEMPs to find out that they had done the same thing. They just regurgitated the same stuff and didn't really look at it to see that it was not practical for today's date and time. So it's been a really good learning process for them. So in this particular case, it's talking about what each county and what some of the roles and responsibilities are for this specific statute. I think it has a pause feature. One of the things that's in there when their local state of emergency comes in is having the necessary personnel and staff to manage, okay? And if you look at that, specifically talks about the school boards when we're talking about sheltering, okay? And we have a very good relationship with our school board, and currently we have several schools that are slated possibly for sheltering. We use one in particular right now for general population, and thank goodness, I'm going to knock on wood, we don't have many people that come when we open up shelters. We have maybe anywhere from 5 to 12 people that show up. It's usually some of the same people, and it's usually several people from Georgia that cross on down because we're the closest thing to take care of them. We did see under Irma, we did see over 40 people that actually attended. They sort of got caught between the storms, and that is a real possibility, so we are preparing for that. One of the programs we have going right now is a shelter retrofit, so we're going to be upgrading some windows and putting in a generator, which actually will take care of the whole building should we need to do that. And we'll also incorporate possibly the special needs shelter should that need to take place, because one of the things is we examined what we had for a special needs shelter at the hospital was not rated for anything above a 2 category hurricane. So it was not a safe place to put those people in a wind event. Under normal circumstances where they just needed to be relocated for a while, it would be fine, but not in a 3 or higher.
What place was that?
Excuse me?
What school was that?
So we were using, no, it was the hospital.
Oh, the hospital,
We were
okay,
using the
okay.
hospital only for special needs.
Gotcha.
Only for special needs. And that's something we partner with the Department of Health. They come in and actually staff it.
John, point it this way. The sensor's actually up here. There you
There,
go.
I'm aiming the wrong way. It's probably my head that's blocking that. So, this is probably the biggest thing that I think that I want to press in some of this right here with all of our different departments, is that it requires the procedures and periodic testing, training, and exercises, which is one of the things we are doing on a smaller level, definitely at the sheriff's office, but we're including the fire department and some of the other divisions now, that we should be training for these events. And one of the things we're going to be practicing is for basically a mass casualty. We're going to be doing basically a plane crash and getting all the departments working together and how we would facilitate moving forward. So the other part of the training that needs to take place is we talked about processes on how we actually do documentation. We've been working really good with the road department on some of the processes to make sure that in the future we have a lot of things in place to show the road work that we've done, the maintenance that's been taking place there. So when we go back and look at the mitigation part of it, we're able to apply then and get some funding for that. Yes, do you have anything you want to add with this?
The only other thing that I would kind of add to it is departmentally, so when we look at not just the training on the documentation side, but that process side. And as you all know, we're a very small county with limited resources and limited manpower, and having those local folks trained and ready in the event that that disaster does come, and we can immediately lean on those different positions and folks to fill those roles, especially with the current atmosphere at the federal level, and not knowing what that emergency disaster assistance is going to look like moving forward. It would absolutely be beneficial to have our folks trained during the blue skies and practice exercise so that they're comfortable moving into those roles when it does become gray skies.
One of the things that we wanted to talk about moving forward, and we will on the individual departments, it's very common now that when a local state emergency happens, a lot of the administrators, they just get sent home. All right? In a lot of other counties, and I also had the similar experiences in Lake City, we would actually task many of those people with job functions as needed for some of the storms, and currently we've not really needed to do that and haven't done it, but for future we're looking to do the training and education. So should we need that force multiplier, especially if we had a no-name event, let's say if we had a train derailment or something like that would end up taking weeks possibly to deal with in the center of town, we would have that force multiplication to be able to deal with some of these things. But yes, sir.
Would the training and preparation include any city assets? Or
Yes, sir.
is it-
So that's one of the things we're doing. So obviously Glenn and the city of McLean, we're asking for, and the city fire, all resources. We're talking about training and educating to work holistically, because that's what emergency management is for the entire county. It's not just a county function; it's all of us. Yes, sir.
John, I'd also think about it, trying to include the Northeast Florida Regional Council, Eric Anderson.
Been on the phone
If
with him today, yes, sir.
If you was on the phone, he's would be a great asset. Anytime you go to planning anything live, he's jam up.
So when I was with the HCA Hospital, I remember Eric when he first started,
Yeah.
so we are constantly working together with
Okay.
that stuff, yes, sir.
I just say utilize them also.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're a great asset to our county.
All right, any of you all have something you want to add to that on your level?
They just don't like you, boy.
It does not like me. There we go, local services. All right, so one of the things as we were looking through, not only the sheriff's office, because we've deployed during multiple events, and its pay policies and other policies, okay? We've noticed that there's some things that we probably should be updating. We've had some conversations with the county manager about it, and we'll be getting with finance to see if we can look at including some of the pay policy changes. That way, certain divisions can be utilized and get, truthfully, a better pay source instead of just going home. Some of it's straight time, depending on what their job coding is and what we're asking them to do, is not eligible for reimbursement. So we want to make sure that our pay policy sets us up for the best availability to get reimbursed for the work that we do. Okay, and like I said, so we're taking a deep dive into that. And again, it's be a slower process because we can't just change things overnight when it comes to a policy, but we want to set ourselves up for success with that. All right, down to different divisions. And this is probably where the biggest heavy lifting can be for the Board of County Commissioners to help support emergency management for the county. Not only the floodplain manager, but the finance, planning, building and zoning, public works and human services. We need to all work together to set ourselves up to make sure that not only with our policies, but our practice. So if we have storms, if we have events, how we're going to function together in order to make it the best result for the county. And like I said, in some cases, it's a matter of personnel that instead of just sending them home, we may be able to cross-train them for some other functions. So if we need to, one example would be, let's say if we set up a point of dispensing, a pod, and we needed to put out water and MREs and things like that. Generally for the first 72 hours, in most cases, they're looking for counties and cities to take care of themselves until you can get maybe some other resources to come in. If we do some training on, and which we're starting to do some of that training, but if we bring in some more of those resources instead of just sending them home, we will have that force multiplier to be able to do that and sustain a little bit longer. And then as the storm, let's say the recovery slows down and we start sending some of the resources from out of the area home, we can then pick up some of that stuff ourselves. So it's looking both, the term is that storms start local and end local, and that's really what happens, is we want to try and be more self-sufficient with that. Again, we've been very lucky that we've not had a lot of that. Last year we started to experience it, and one of the things that came out of that was our, I call it hybrid VOAD, COAD volunteers that have come in, and if you saw some of the discussions, we talked about how many meals that we put out and waters and MRE and things like that. That was a great help that we've not normally done in this county, and we're looking to do it in multiple locations. I'm going to blame the batteries.
Thank you.
It was close. All right, so policies, that's probably another big heavy lift that we're going to need to work with the commissioners, is looking at our procurement policies, the pay and labor especially. We noticed that there's some deficiencies there, and listing people as emergency workers. Some of those categories, in other words, when a local state of emergency takes place and designating some people as emergency workers, that can make a lot of the difference on making it reimbursable. And that would be a nice thing for a lot of the work that we're doing, that we're already doing, to make sure it's reimbursable that we can come back to. Some of the insurance, we need to look and make sure that it's categorized properly. And we already do a good job of the local state of emergency getting together and saying that we need to pull that up. The only other recommendation I would make is, because if we have a sustained local state of emergency is making sure on a regular basis we come back before the board and just make sure that we're saying that it's still enacted. That's really the only other thing about a local state of emergency. You guys are way too quiet for me. All right. So I put thank you in there and I listed the people that I brought with me. I do want to have a chance to ask John Scott. I know I've covered a lot of stuff. Can I get you to speak a little bit for us, sir?
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Yeah,
Man. One, thank you all for inviting us in and hosting us and giving us an opportunity, not just to talk to y'all, but to continue to learn. One of the things, and I think that's sort of the spirit behind what John's doing, is in emergency management, one of our core tenets is we learn from each other, right? My favorite disaster is somebody else's disaster because I get to learn from it and I don't have to own it. But the big benefit is when it is our turn to earn it, and the lovely part about Florida is it will one day be our turn to own it, is we get to learn those kinds of lessons. And I think, and you saw John touch on some of the important pieces and really highlight, in Brevard, we work straight for the county, we're not under the sheriff's office. What I always tell folks is, we don't own any of the fire trucks or any of the police cars or the deputies or anybody in public works who's doing that stuff, or our road and bridges. That's not us. That's not who we do day to day. Our role is to coordinate all that, right? Like we talk about ourselves as being the easy button. You hit if you need some help. I talk about us as the guy who knows a guy who knows a guy. We can get you what you need. But teamwork is so essential to what we do in emergency management. And we're very fortunate, and I know John and Dennis expressed similar with y'all. We have such a strong support at the board level, and public safety, and then during times of emergency is always our commissioners, and I'm sure it is for y'all, #1 focus, and really not just expressing that to the public, but really reinforcing that at a department level and with your cities and with your partners. It's just going to make that response work so much better. We all suffer challenges, right? Like we're all limited in a variety of things that we do. It's the people that's our greatest resource. It's that raw talent that's our greatest resource. I'm born and raised in Brevard. My local knowledge, my local connections, people I grew with who may not work for the county, who may not but we fish on the weekends or we see each other at the grocery store, right? That means something to us, and that's what we're leveraging every day. So as a team, finding ways to continue to do that, and what John touched on is so important, right? Practice. So I'm a big believer in, you play how you practice. And hopefully we play very infrequently. But if we practice, we're going to be in the best position possible. I try to remind folks all the time, it's a disaster, so it's going to break. Are we ready when it breaks? Do we know what we're doing? More importantly, do we know who the right people to lean on to get us through that break and get us out the other side? Because that is when our residents count on us the most, and we want to make sure we deliver for them. And I think that's really what we're trying to do. What everyone in emergency management is trying to do is really solidify those relationships. Spend every day looking for new relationships, because you never know what the weird thing's going to be, right? Like you'd have told me in February of 2020 I was going to be involved in vaccines and shots and figuring out how to test people and how to say coronavirus. No thank you. And also never again, no thank you for that too, right? But you never know what the next day is going to bring. But what I'm always super proud of is that as a team we rally to the challenge, and it's because it is rooted in our people and their care for our community. So John, I don't know if there are other things.
A question for you.
Yes, sir.
Mind. How do you utilize your local assets? What's your process? You're just talking about fishing buddies. We have a lot of those around here. So
Yes, sir.
now how do you go about utilizing that?
So we do it two ways, right? Like there's the formal way, where they're going to have a business or they're going to be in that community, and we have a group of folks similar to y'all. We're structured in important functions, right? So we have a group that just works with our business folks, and some of that is formal, where they'll have a contract with the county and we'll work with them. But more importantly, and you heard John talk about the concept of a COAD, that community organizations active in disasters. That's really where we leverage a lot of that stuff. So, you know, they may know someone who can get somebody a generator. They have a generator. Maybe they run a business and they want to help, but they don't know who to help to, right? So we help get them connected to the right place. You know, one of the things that we're super proud of in our community is we created pop-up pantries, right? A lot of folks have different kinds of food pantries, whether that's an official food pantry or in someone's church, someone's synagogue, whatever that is, but leveraging those kinds of things so that, you know, we're not just in a parking lot handing out water. We will if we have to, right? But that's never as targeted or smart as we want to be. What we try to do is say, hey, you're already servicing these people. We'll give you some extra commodities if you'll increase your ability to serve. You know, it's hard to find those people from a government perspective, right? Not everyone puts their hands up, they're all wearing a bunch of different hats. It is those community relationships where we do find them. So it is, you know, it is someone's soccer coach, and my wife's a basketball coach, so it is someone on her team whose dad maybe has this relationship and says, hey, I know your husband's in this, I want to help and I can do these kinds of things. And that's the kind of stuff I think we're doing every day. And I think that's one of the great things really about, we talk about smaller communities, and I've had the good fortune of going to a lot of smaller communities, and that's actually my favorite place to deploy to, because it's a lot easier to work with. I'm not a huge red tape guy. But it is so much easier. You identify those community resources, you identify the problems, and you solve it so much faster. You guys will solve something in a day that may take me a week. I'm super jealous of that. When we're always trying to find ways to get to those kinds of places. So, I mean, I think that's really how we leverage those kinds of relationships when we're in those situations. And then we're also leveraging county staff, city staff day to day, making sure, as John sort of said, we are leveraging those people as much as possible because they are a resource for us, right? And we're all getting paid, so we might as well go to work. Yeah. And service is at the core part of what we're doing. So that's how, and then we have formalized programs for how we move them and those kinds of stuff. But you work for Brevard County, you sign a form that says, I understand during disasters, I have a role.
Appreciate it.
No.
John?
Yes, sir.
How would you grade the preparedness of Brevard County?
So you want my official grade, or you want what keeps me up at night?
Somewhere in between, probably.
Yes. So we're in a good place. Like we're really well prepared overall, right? Like what keeps me up at night is the little things. But again, I get paid to obsess about the little things, and
Yeah.
it works well because I'm a little OCD.
So am I.
Right there. I mean, it's all green head to toe for me today. So, you know, where I really do take solace, and again, I'll go back to it, is it's going to be weird, it's going to break, but our people are in a good position. And as long as we feel like we can, you know, I can pick up the phone and call anybody today, right now, and begin to solve the problem. And as long as the person on the other side of the line is going to meet me in the middle and we're going to solve that problem together, I feel really good about where we are. And the best sort of confirmation of that for me is when we host our exercise every year, or we do our big hurricane exercise, and we got 150, 200 people showing up every year. And then we say, hey, we'll see you in a couple weeks for whatever we're doing next. And we're continuing to get that participation. That shows me that our partners are valuing it. We work really hard to make sure they find value in the experience. But then again, they're getting the support at the top because they're saying, hey, this is important to us. And then they go execute it. And one of the big things we're always focused on is making sure we're connecting each and every individual to the mission, right? Because I can talk a long time, which you guys have already probably figured out. I can talk a long time about what it is we do and why we do it, but at the end of the day, an emergency is when our residents are most vulnerable. And oftentimes we spend our time with the most vulnerable of most vulnerable. Helping them makes a tremendous difference. And you don't have to do that much in a disaster to help them. And so we keep people connected to that mission, and I think that's one of the reasons they keep coming back.
How long did it take you to get to that comfort level?
So I am the benefactor of a long-standing program history with that. Like I go back, Bob Lay, who started for us in the late 90s, early 2000s. preach those kinds of things. So it took us a while. I don't want to say that it won't, but it can happen very quickly if you're committed to progress. Because one of the other big things that we do, and I'd like to think it's why John invited me, is because we are committed to progress every year. We never rest, we never stop. We're always trying to push. So, what we were 10 years ago, we're night and day from that today. Doesn't mean we weren't good then, but we're different and we're more tangible, we're more flexible today than we were then because times change, right? You have to evolve with it. I think that's the real skill of any EM program is, are you moving with the goalposts, right? Are you evolving with it? It's a long way to say, it's that
It takes a while.
it does, but you can also make some really big strides. And we were talking about it beforehand. Sometimes the best way to figure those kinds of stuff out is you unfortunate enough to get hit, and then you kind of see what's going on. So, okay, these are the big things I need to have, and everyone's sort of in that pool, and you solve that problem. So every crisis, there's an opportunity.
Somebody else? I appreciate it. man.
I think it's
Good.
important that we recognize that John Scott runs the most activated EOC in the United States.
Yep.
Yeah. We are pretty busy.
You're big,
Well, and we
and a big target too.
We have the good fortune of having space. So the space community space centers in our county. So last year we activated 116 times. Obviously different scale activations and those kinds of things, but it does keep us pretty busy. And again, to John's point, you never know what we're going to have to activate for, but having those processes in place, but more importantly, having those people in place, going to set you up for success.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you so much.
So one of the other things I wanted to share was obviously some experiences. And I tease Dennis all the time. You know how passionate he is, and then sometimes I appear to be very monotone. And I tell him it's 30 years of experience, over 30 years. And I've been through active shooters, I've been shot at, all that fun stuff, not fun stuff. Went through the Bugaboo fire and whatnot. But one of the more recent ones that really hit home for me, and we were just starting to, I had Dennis to come on board, and we were just really starting to get into the crux of EM or CEMP and whatnot, and Idalia hit. Okay? And that Sunday night I was sweating because really that last Sunday night jog, we could have been Lafayette County. Now, probably not as bad, but most people don't realize that it wasn't just the hurricane in Lafayette County, it was all the tornadoes in the hurricane that caused the damage. We deployed some of our staff there to go help Idalia County. I've known them forever. I worked in Lake City most of my career, law enforcement officer. I know the sheriff there very well. We go over there to support our staff taking water and MREs, Dennis and I did. And we got there, and a couple of the people that were helping at EM from out of the county that were there helping the sheriff's office told me, we're out of here. And I went, well, you guys just got here. What's going on? They go, the sheriff has run us off. We're getting out of here. Not trying to get into too much of the dirty laundry that was happening there. There was a conflict, and they went, we're glad you're here. You're taking over. And I went, wait a minute. What are we walking in here to? So I talked with the sheriff. I talked to some of the constitutionals, and they said, we don't need the outside help. We can take care of it ourselves. And I was told by a constitutional, we can handle $2 million. We figured, right, what we've seen here, $2 million. Am I right, Dennis? And I said, come here. And I pulled him off to the side, and I said, what do you mean $2 million? He says, $2 million in debris we can handle. I went, you've got more than $2 million sitting on 27 out here in front of your EOC. He goes, no. I went, yes. We had a long conversation, and he said, what can you do to help? So I got on the phone. We started making phone calls. And by the end of the day, I was able to get John Scott and a team of people to come over there and help, and it turned everything around. Would you say so, sir?
Yes.
Okay. Not that there weren't challenges, okay, but that county would have been in failure because before everything got done, I think it was 25 million.
I was over that.
Oh, yeah. 25 million was when I stopped counting that they were on the hook for. Can you imagine 25 million telling the community that we got to come up with? Okay. So it was a great learning experience in the sense, okay, to see how some of these things worked and whatnot. There were some great experiences in there. They learned that we need to do some training and education. Obviously, they got whammed again, didn't they? Okay. So when you look geographically in there, we've been very lucky, and I can promise you when the storms are coming, I'm jumping up and down, waving, blowing, trying to make sure it turns from us. But we're going to get something at some point, okay? Whether we get a direct hit or just the winds alone. My biggest concern is actually fire. I keep talking to the fire department. I keep talking about forestry and whatnot. The forestry is doing a great job of doing some of the burning and whatnot. But I've seen wildfire. That's very indiscriminate and it does not take much and it's out of control. So you talk about things keeping you up at night. We haven't even had some of these things, but again, we're worried about them, trying to plan for them and work for them. So my hope is we bring some of these experiences and share them with you all. We can then go back to some of our departments and tweak, because I'm not going to say we're horrible, but we got to tweak a lot of little things, okay? And then get into some processes. And that's my goal. And I see some great warmth up here looking at us going, yes, we agree we need to try and do that. I know we're not going to change everything overnight, nor is that what I want, because I want to do the process that's right for us. We don't need to do what Gainesville's doing. We don't need to do what Lafayette's doing or Clay County, but we need to look at what they do. And that's what I want to do, is bring back to you all and say, this is what my options and recommendations are, and say, I think this is a good plan moving forward. And then it will take a while to implement, okay? But I think we're in a really good spot. I know, and we talked about networking with friends and our neighbors and whatnot. I do that all the time. I've done that over my 30-year career in law enforcement, do the same thing in EM. I know a guy that knows a guy. I don't have to know it all. My heresy is pushed all out because I knew too much in there. But I'm not afraid to ask questions, and they all know that, and I ask them to come help, and they come help. So, and I'm not shy about doing that. So I feel good about it, and I appreciate you all for sitting and listening to us. And I wanted to ask, how about Ms. Donna, do you have some things you want to share with me for me?
Probably just to reiterate some of the things that have already been said before. About our emergency management agency in Walton County, I like to say it takes a village. Everybody heard that statement before, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes a little bit of everybody to manage a disaster. So during a time of disaster in our emergency operations center, we have people that specialize in communication, people that specialize in transportation, agriculture, and animals, and that kind of thing. Public works is a really big deal. Business and industry people, law enforcement, fire rescue, utilities, military, human services, health and medical. So it takes a little bit of all of those special and many more. But it takes all of us together, working together to manage a disaster. So, and we form those relationships ahead of time. So everybody that comes into our emergency operations center, we know them. We talked on the phone last week, and emergency management is a very small community in the state of Florida, and in fact in the whole country. But all of us emergency managers know each other. We do pick up the phone. We do call one another, as I'm sure you do with your counterparts in other counties. They're a great asset to have, your peers. I will reiterate what John said about the disaster pay policy, because any kind of reimbursement is based on the policies that you have in force when the disaster happens. So if you don't have a policy that says you're going to pay your employees overtime, then you don't get reimbursed for paying overtime. And employee disaster duties, that's also important. So you can either pay your employees to sit at home and go stir crazy, or you can pay them to help their community recover. It fosters a sense of involvement, a sense of belonging, and it also spurs the economy. They're making that money, they're spending it right here in your community. So those are just a few of the things that I wanted to reiterate. And thank you for having me.
On the payroll, is that just coding, as far as payroll coding?
It is actually a policy, and I'm sure
Policy.
somewhere in your ordinances, in your code of ordinances, I read a few of them, but in your code of ordinances, it's the way you pay your employees, and it's probably in human resources. It probably lives in human resources, but if you just have a small little blurb in there that it's at the discretion of the board or the county administrator, whether you're going to pay overtime and that kind of thing.
Are we working on that, John? Okay.
And having any time
That's very important.
anyone that
Very important.
anyone that gains employment with Walton County is when they sign the paperwork, they know that they're going to have a disaster duty. So it's, it's not a surprise. We train constantly. We train our, every department in the county is trained almost nonstop. So they can just transition right into that role when the big one happens.
Appreciate it.
I'd like to add to that. So in part, and we talked about it a little bit a couple of meetings ago. Currently, the way we do things, we pay folks to go home on administrative leave. That administrative leave is not reimbursable, as they both mentioned. But it was coded as a coding thing was coded in there. We then had to go back and spend tireless number of hours separating that time that was coded to an emergency event with Debbie or Arlene to pull that out of because it was not eligible. And I would also, a fantastic point that Donna mentioned there in that training side of things is it's literally a smooth transition when it comes to that. Once you establish that policy, not only of how they're paid and the specific compensation, but there's some things you have to be really careful of because you can't say with a presidential declaration, that kind of rules everything out. But designing that policy so that you know that when that gray sky comes, how can we best, right, position the county to recapture as much as possible. And then additionally, the training that she referenced as far as the role. So there are examples. Can you tell me what say a department head, do you have a specific set of trainings like the ICS type trainings that a department head has to attend?
Most of our department heads have to do the basics, the 1, 2, 7, 800 series. And it's highly recommended that anybody that works inside of an EOC does take the 300 and 400 parts. I don't necessarily agree with that. I like the 2300 series because the 300 and 400 is really geared towards an incident management team that's coming in. But the 2300 series is a good bunch of them. But just for them to understand the ICS structure, the emergency support function structure, and our EOC works in a hybrid of both of those. So we do have emergency support functions, and we also have the ICS structure. So just so that your employees have an understanding that during gray skies is what we call it, a disastrous gray skies. Today it's blue skies. But during gray skies, I may supervise my supervisor based on what position we have in the Emergency Operations Center. And that, you just have to know where you're at in that structure.
Lots of folks will take librarians, for an example. They'll take the librarians, people that work in your library system, and put them in a place where they're actually tracking or planning or that kind of thing. So there's...
Ours actually staffs our Community Information Center because when you have a disaster, the community wants to call. They want to know what's going on. Our library staff comes to our Emergency Operations Center and sits in a different room and answers those calls and gives information to the public.
So as we move forward, one of the things I want to do, like I said, bring examples on what other communities do, how they utilize staff, and then pick out the best way we want to do that here in Baker County. So everybody does it differently, even though there's a lot of similarities. But again, we want to make it what fits us. The pay policy is the same thing. I've got several different policies I'm going to get with the county manager on we can present and look at to make sure the changes fit what we have, what we're going to do with staffing. Training was the same thing. There's different trainings, recommendations, and whatnot, and we're going to look at coming up with some core trainings for the different positions that are out there. So it's not something we're trying to solve tonight. And I know when we talk about some of these acronyms, you're like, I'm not really sure what that is, because I can tell you, I'm one of these big ones in the meetings. I'll raise my hand and go, I have no idea what you're talking about with that alphabet soup, because which hat is it? Fire, law enforcement, EM, because they all mean something different. But we will educate our staff with all of that as we move forward with some of it, as we pick out how we want to function and move forward with that.
I do want to give some very specific things, and I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this. Yeah, I'm sure you have some idea of how many hours Chris puts in every single time we have a storm.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And he doesn't get any additional compensation, and the hours that he runs. At the sheriff's office, we're not set up that way.
Yeah, we get
At the
that.
sheriff's office, when it becomes an emergency, at that local, decision-making point that this board chooses, Chris's time, Sarah's time, they can be compensated and reimbursed for that compensation is the most important part. But it's, again, not only an incentive for somebody to do more, right, because now they can actually be paid overtime rate, which we would never get before, but it also gives the ability to get the maximum amount of there and then get that reimbursement coming back. I do also want to just briefly mention, I think we forwarded maybe 2 or 3 Lee County's emergency worker policy. I think we forwarded it to the group several weeks ago. There's lots of different options and lots of different places in Florida do it differently. 67 counties that do it 67 different ways. But finding something that gets us there, again, because you can't change it after the declaration. That's the most important part. And so it's just something I would consider, because Chris is not alone. I mean, I'm sure most of our department heads are absolutely putting in crazy hours that they're not getting. By the time he's done, I'm surprised he's making minimum wage, right? When you divide the hours by what their total pay was. So it's something that really benefits us on both sides of that coin.
And again, that process is going to be, we're going to bring several examples in. I will probably make some recommendations, and then it's whatever the will of the board is to try and move forward with it. But again, we want to set our workers up for the best success. So obviously we get back to the community the best we can.
He wanted to speak. I seen him standing.
I asked him, and he said no. What did you have, John? He said you stepped up and you wanted to speak.
I was just being available if you guys have anything.
Okay.
Just wanted to be there.
All right, so another perspective I want to bring up, Ms. Kaysen. She has been deployed to several events that I've seen and had some unique experiences in smaller communities, and I would just like her to share some of them. Obviously, our region coordinator is here too. He has worked tirelessly with us, and I appreciate both their help. I'd like for you to share both.
Good afternoon. As you said, my name is Elizabeth Kaysen. I work for the Florida Division of Emergency Management. I do the same thing that Josh does. I work with recovery and mitigation with the counties in the Orlando area, but I've also come from the West Panhandle area, working with counties such as Washington, Calhoun, and I've been deployed to Lafayette, Hamilton, several of these other, more rural communities. And so I just wanted to offer a little bit of perspective as we're thinking about what needs to be done in order to get some of that federal reimbursement. Because that's, I think, one of the biggest things that we're thinking about when we're thinking about recovery. How do we get a disaster declaration, and then how do we get some of that funding back to help us rebuild and recover? And I know that there's some questions about how that's going to look, but I can talk about how it is right now today. So just getting back to, if I could, 2 slides back. Yeah, please.
Good luck.
There are several things that we can do now to prepare to recover. So John Scott's talked a bit about how things are set up in other counties, and also Donna came and spoke about some of the different plans and policies. But when you're looking at trying to get a disaster declaration, all of these different departments are going to be a part of getting that declaration. We need to set up a narrative to help the federal government understand how big is big and how bad is bad. And that is going to come from information from all of your different departments as well as the community itself. So information from your floodplain administrator. What kind of flooding were you seeing? Are you seeing substantial damage to buildings? What kind of fiscal impacts are you seeing in your community? Are you having to reach into your reserves or expend all of your potential funding? There was a county that was impacted by Hurricane Michael that was financially cleaned out within several minutes of the storm making landfall. So we really want to make sure that you are able to track those costs and report them and let the state and then the federal government know how big the impacts are to your community and how impactful they are. Planning, building, and zoning, your building officials and code enforcement, to whatever extent you have them, are also involved in determining what kinds of damages are in your community, helping paint that picture. Are you seeing 50 homes that have been destroyed or 500 homes that have been destroyed? Does it matter for your community more that they have had a particular building destroyed? Is it really impactful that your water treatment facility has been impacted? Is that the one water treatment facility for where most of the people live? As well as public works, what kinds of damages are you seeing to your roads? Most especially is one of our high dollar items. And then human services, what kind of impacts are actually happening in the community? Are you seeing people that are not able to go to school, not able to go to work, not able to run their businesses? So that information all gets sent up to the state, and we use that as a part of a narrative to help drive a declaration request from the federal government. Could you go forward to the next, please? So these policies also will help inform getting reimbursement from the federal government. So we talked a bit about procurement, but I also want to mention specifically like an exigent procurement policy, because the way that you are procuring things today is going to take time. But when you are in a disaster situation, you will probably need to be procuring things a bit more quickly. And so if you don't have a policy that specifically says this is how we do things when we have a local state of emergency, then FEMA looks at your policy and says you didn't follow your own rules and regulations, and so it's hard for them to justify reimbursing when you are ostensibly breaking written rules. Same with pay and labor. It was already mentioned that it's really important to have those policies in place so that FEMA can justify reimbursing for the additional hours that everybody has put in. If you don't have something in your pay policy that says that you will reimburse them for that time, then FEMA cannot justify reimbursing you for giving them that time. And it's also really important that all of these policies mention that this is how you do things during a disaster. Insurance is also something that's really required. When we're looking at FEMA reimbursement, we have several pitfalls that we do see. We see several different applicants, counties, cities, nonprofit organizations applying to FEMA. And when they ask for funding, sometimes they're deobligated. They are not able to receive the funding because of incomplete documentation. If your staff at the county level in the many different various departments are not familiar with some of the documentation requirements, then when FEMA asks for things, you're not going to have all of the documents that are required. One of the prime examples is roads. I know that you have a roads crew here that is very knowledgeable, very invested in the community, and understands everything that's happening on every mile of road that you have. FEMA wants to see that all of that is written on a piece of paper somewhere and that those maintenance documents are complete so that they can show that those roads have actually been taken care of the entire time of the life of the road, for example. And the other one is those missed deadlines. So making sure that you'll have crews and teams that are educated and able to provide those documents in a timely fashion, because if you don't understand where all of those different documents are all the time, then it can take a long time to pull some of those documents together, and it can be really difficult to make those timelines that FEMA imposes on you when you're trying to get those reimbursements. Do you have some local perspective?
So y'all see we led with the meat and potatoes there with the data. So one thing as regional coordinators, we get to deploy, we get to go around to all regions through disasters, different states in some cases, and we get to see what works and what could work better. In my experience, and I'm sure Elizabeth can probably back me up on that, is pay policies and procedures and bringing people to the table. If you look at the recovery for Joplin, Missouri, one of the things that they were able to recover faster because their community came in and they started working together right off the bat. They made sure it was an all hands on deck. Your churches were involved, your community group. They started a co-ad. Director Blanchard and the team have already started all that. So they're setting you up for success in the future already. And you just have to have those other players to the table, those policies and procedures to back it up, to make sure that you go with, those clawbacks are minimized. Another thing that the state of Florida is doing, and I believe Baker County is jumping on board with too, is the FROC program. I'm sure some of you have heard of it. I know I've talked to Ms. Little about it a little bit too. We can provide guidance. We can bounce your pays and policies, things that you're considering, we can bounce it off of our compliance team, and they can say, well, maybe you could tweak it a little here to look at this, and Director Blanchard and the EM team are already looking at that as well. So those are just things that can set you up for success, and a lot of steps that your EM team has already taken to move you in that direction.
One of the things I want to touch on that I think I've seen a lot of, behind the scenes conversations taking place, not only inside Baker County, but other counties as they're going through the recovery mitigation process, is the planning, building, and zoning. One of the things that has come up over and over, and we were hit really hard on it with the Steel Bridge area, with all of the people that were living, some people call it substandard housing, but the trailers, portable buildings, that type of stuff. I can tell you that FEMA is really taking a hard look at code enforcement when it comes to that stuff. So if we're not, and it's not just those buildings, it's just regular structures as well. If we're not enforcing some of those things that are already on the books, we're doing a disservice to our population, because then, in effect, they're not going to be obligated, they're not going to be eligible for a lot of their fundings, because we're not doing some of the things we need to do. So we're trying to get some of that education too, that is moving forward. We need to really look at some of that stuff, that if we have it on the books, we need to be enforcing some of it, because there were a lot of challenges with some of those. One of the things we're still trying to look at was the numbers high as, 66 people? So we didn't find out until most recently that supposedly 66 families, people, were displaced from the storms. We didn't know about it. We've been asking for weeks, months, did we have unmet needs in certain areas? And then one of our last meetings, we found out, well, what are you going to do with these people? And we hammered the group that had the information, because you have to have an information sharing agreement to get access to the information, which was very frustrating, because I'm like, okay, I thought we had one, but we didn't have the right one. So we got it filed, and I'm thinking it shouldn't take all this time, because I'm a law enforcement agent, you can share certain things with us. We got some outside groups to come in and assist with that. Turned out we only had 20 families that were affected, that were in the hotels. Now we're down to 0. We'll give a little bit more update on that. We worked very quickly once we got that information. We just got the information sharing agreement, but we're going to go back. We want to find out who those families are, to find out where the damages were, because when we look at holistically, I just want to know where those unmet needs are. I don't necessarily need to know your name, date of birth, and any of that stuff. I want to make sure I'm looking for reoccurring stuff for the next storm I can start planning for, is it flooding and things like that. So we still got a lot of work to do, but again, when it comes to the planning and zoning and making sure that if we got code enforcement issues, we have to look at that, as well as the floodplain management. There were some things that were lacking in that level. We're doing some training and education there. But again, that's why, again, I appreciate you all being here, is we're hoping to help hit that enforcement, to make sure that we do the training, we do the documentation. One of the other things I'm setting up, I call the Bible, but I've done it in other parts with different categories. But when it comes to the reporting part of a mitigation project and a recovery project for each of our departments, I'm building on what you need to have together, supporting documents to turn in. That way, if I get hit by a train, Dennis gets hit by a train, or Chris gets hit by a train, you can go back to that book and go, this is what we need to have to turn in. This is what we need to continue to have on blue sky days. So when the gray sky happens, we get paid. We get reimbursed. All right. It's going to take a while. It's a big, daunting project, but I think it's worth it to the community to do something like that. Anybody have anything else in the group wants to share with us? Dennis, anything?
Just briefly, and so I tie it back in. So one of the problems, and this is maybe a bigger conversation for later.
Dennis,
However, tends to start
Well,
with
we're recording it.
emergency.
I'm gonna make sure
I
people.
just assume I was loud enough they could hear me.
Well, you
in
are to me,
downtown
but
Boone.
maybe not the other people.
Apologize, sir. We're taking advantage right now of it's grants, right? That's what it is. It's been in the headlines a lot lately. But the grants are how these projects are being reimbursed for us now. Some of the things that we have, they're recognizing that we have limited personnel, limited resources, limited funds. We are fiscally constrained rural county. So some of these things tie together. And I do think there's opportunities, for us to be able to help build some of what John has been discussing, and these folks coming from the outside have helped talk to us about, is there are opportunities for grants to help us hire staff at a minimum on a part-time level, but possibly that folds into a full-time level, to help us build this as we go. And so therefore, we're not taking and adding one fiscal load and adding more to it. If we can get access to those grants, and a big part of kind of what we do together in the grants is we're not just looking at what's available for post-Debbie, although we're doing that very tightly now. We're also now starting to bring in the folks that, hey, when the storm money is gone, what's available for our fiscally constrained county to go next? I think the conference call we were on not too long ago talking about the Department of Commerce and how much money is available that we may be able to take a lot more advantage of to help us build to some of the things that all of us here are talking about. And again, I think it's a very long-term process, but so many of the things are so closely interwoven. If you'd have asked me before Hurricane Lafayette, when I got to meet two of the four folks that are here with us today in that very quick deployment, if you'd asked me then, how important are your local churches and how important are your Boy Scouts in a disaster? And I would have told you none. That's what law enforcement and EM and that's firefighters, that's what we do. But I found out with one phone call from Miss Eva, when we had a need and she made one phone call and 1,400 vehicles showed up in downtown Mayo. And those of you that have been to downtown Mayo, picture that.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't move anywhere. None of the highways could move because that one lady sent one text to her group. And immediately we got response. You're going to hear another example of that later after in our update this evening. But there are so many of these things that are so closely connected that if you looked at them just in a silo, you may not recognize how they fit the big picture. And I think Elizabeth did a fantastic job just now of talking about how policies ties into your practices ties into your pay. That all these things are very, very closely interconnected. And so I did want to kind of bring up the fact that, and for us like Human Services, I can tell you that one of our lessons learned from this one is we didn't have a good pulse on the Human Services side for this storm. I consider a personal failure on my part that we had that big of an exposure in this county that I didn't know about. And we had spent the better part of a year trying to build that before the storms hit. Well, the storms hit and we thought, well, we're okay, we won't need it. And then to get that notification that it was 66 or 24, if it was one single mom with 9 kids that doesn't have a place to go afterwards. I consider that a failure on my part because I left that Human Services connection out. I just failed. And so making sure that we don't fail this community the next time is making sure we include that into the big picture moving forward so that we do get that complete emergency management function that doesn't let folks fall through the cracks and doesn't let folks suffer unnecessarily when we get them help and resources that they need.
Well, one thing you're going to have to find out is delegation. You have to delegate some of the authority out. You can't do everything yourself. You can't be responsible for everything yourself. You have to get good. You're only as good as the people you surround yourself with. And don't beat yourself up because all you need to do is start delegating to other people. And when you do, you'll find out you become stronger because of the people you surround yourself with.
Dennis calls it a failure. I don't.
It's a learning experience.
It was a learning experience. I don't consider it a failure because we asked everybody we could.
That's right.
Everybody we could. But we learned something. We learned something that there was a vacuum there we didn't know about.
Yeah.
So it won't happen the next
Well,
time.
it's learn. I mean, it's all.
Now that doesn't mean something else won't come up, but we've learned this one. So
Right.
I appreciate his passion for that stuff.
Well, in fairness, for me, I'm a lifelong resident, and I feel it, right? 100%. So you pass them in the grocery store, it's my mom, it's my aunt, right? It's my neighbor. Living in Taylor, I mean, you talk about the folks that's out of power. I know what folks is out of power, what folks don't have cell phone service, because I'm one of them.
Right.
But it is, and I feel a great responsibility towards that public service side of things. And that's another thing that was mentioned a couple of different times is that level of commitment to that public service and service for our community. So for me, the John said it best. It won't happen again. We're absolutely going to make sure that we're prepared. And the boss, he doesn't tell you all this, but the boss says we're not going to let anybody fail. We're going to make sure we survive. We're going to do what we have to do for this community to make it happen. And so for me, I'm really hopeful that this, as we start to build this process, that we can build the strongest, best, most cohesive team we could possibly build to help our folks when stuff
Yes, ma'am.
goes right.
I just wanted to also tie back into the point about none of us are doing this alone. Not only is your community coming together, I know that communities like this, everybody's willing to pitch in, but also the emergency management and first responder public safety community is also all of your partners that you can lean on from other counties, other municipalities, and here at the state. And so for the FROC program, the slogan is prepare to recover. And so as you're looking at potentially making any changes, we're also available at your request to review any contracts, policies, or procedures to provide you some feedback. As part of the FROC program and our disaster readiness assessment in the FROC program, but we do also offer that service outside of the program as well. So if there's anything that we can do to help you meet whatever goals you're trying to reach, we're happy to do so. And you also don't have to reinvent the wheel from those either, because obviously there are so many other counties and cities that have those to bring to bear as well.
Thank you.
I would say
That's
that
part
they've
of
been
my
fantastic.
being stronger together. It's not only utilizing people here in the county, but it's everywhere.
So again,
And I've seen through this process, the different groups of people in the state of Florida and people who really care about their community, and not only their community, but their state. It really impresses me. I don't know about the other commissioners, but what I've seen through this process, I can tell that your heart's into it, because you're not only looking at what's local. I mean, you're going throughout the state. We got somebody here from Brevard County. Is that what it is? Brevard?
And Walton.
and
So,
Walton.
Walton
And that-
County. So
yeah.
that means a lot.
That's a big step.
That means a lot.
Absolutely, and that was something that I wanted to point out. What Ms. Reed said, it's a small group of people when it comes to emergency management. We're very thankful to be for our people. You know what I mean? And we always say that our greatest asset is our people,
Exactly.
and that's super important. And also hitting on Mr. Scott, what he said is like we can learn. You know, I'm sorry that it happened in Brevard or wherever. But hey, you know that's still our people in that circle. We can learn from it and grow together.
Yeah, we
And I'll-
jokingly say, we'll come to the party, we don't want to host it.
Right, that's right, that's right. But no, I'm glad that we're all in it together at the same time, and we can learn from what they did or what happened there, and we can use it here. I mean, I don't think we're gonna have a spaceship or anything
We don't
here.
want it landing
we,
here.
we don't want it landing here. We'll keep that in Brevard. But,
Ocean Pond ain't
you know,
big enough.
we can learn from just that simple task. You know what I mean? So
Well,
it's
When I came to
Thankful
EM
for it.
and talking with the sheriff, what my goals and plans are, my vision is still the same. I definitely feel like we're moving that way. The group of commissioners I have before us right now, I'm very excited with where we are and where we're going. Just like we've been coming and bringing you updates on where we are with some of our projects, I hope to come that way. I will. It's my promise to you. I'll come back and let you know where we are moving forward with growing our emergency management in the county. And some of the things with the different trainings and whatnot. I hope you don't mind our emails sometimes when we copy everybody.
No.
We were kind of asked to, and we kept going with it. Hopefully you don't block us and at least find some of it interesting sometime, or it helps put you to sleep. But I really do. Dennis knows this, I say it all the time, we're not going to let the county fail. So we're very passionate, even though I don't show up quite as much as he does. Our team, including Scott over there, who sits there very quietly, and that's everybody that we work with. It's not just because you wear title EM. It's all of us. Okay, and that's the road department. Everybody, we're all working very hard for the county, and so far we've got a good appetite for learning, and I'm excited about it. So I'm going to keep it going and light a fire when I need to. So
Appreciate it.
Anybody got anything to add before we close? Is it done a little bit early?
I do want to reiterate something that John just said, and that is, I believe we've got a board, and just from my perspective, I see a board, I told this group today, we've got a board that has an appetite to start building these things for the future for our county, and I don't think there'd be a more perfect time and a more perfect board to really help us get through that process and kind of get the processes and programs built for the long-term success.
Well, we need to be prepared. We don't need on-the-job training. We need to be prepared when it comes. You're still going to have on-the-job training.
Yes.
It's not going to be perfect, but we need to. I mean, you're already reaching out to the assets and learning from them, not reinventing the wheel. I was going to say the same thing. I mean, if you already got people that you can go to and gather all that information, and every county's different, and we all do things different, but it don't mean that we can't utilize and grow from each other. Even our small county can help the big county, believe it or not.
And
So-
we do all the time.
right. To reiterate, I mean, we're preparing our future and preserving our past. You know what I mean? So we got to look forward
If
and
nothing else,
prepare.
if nothing else, we do in the training that I try and preach to everybody is being flexible. And so far, we've been that flexible. Now, I don't want to break, but being flexible, and we're doing a good job.
And I agree with you with the board we have here, but I also want to tell you, without the government we have in the state, the leaders we have
Oh,
on
certainly,
the
yes.
state level,
Yes.
they're making a lot of things possible that was never possible before. So it comes from the top down.
It comes from a lot of places. And again, I want to thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. We feel like we've been heard, and I feel like we're moving in a good direction.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, and thank everybody else.
Thank y'all for traveling.
Thanks for coming over.
Stop and get some gas and a sandwich on your way out.
No, we may need to put some new batteries in.
And that is the end of our meeting.